Was that
Hello, everyone. Hi. All right, welcome everyone. It's 7 o'clock, even by the clock that's a little bit slow here, so we will go ahead and get started. Call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Oh, I am. I'm going to be real quiet until I'm sure I'm not echoing. Great. All right, so welcome everyone. I'll go ahead and call the Finance Committee to order. It looks like Finance Committee is entirely in person, so we're good there. I believe the Select Board would like to call order.
yes, call the financial forum to order on Wednesday, May 20th. Do you know if there's anyone online?
I don't see any Select Board members online. No, Sean Grant is online, but that's not here.
So just
Yes.
Karen, yes, Chris Beaver,
Yes.
yes.
Welcome. And if I see anyone else on pop-up of Zoom, I'll try to give you a heads up. All right. So welcome to this spring edition of the Financial Forum. So we know we have a uncomfortably exciting budget prospects ahead of us for FY28. So I really appreciate people coming together now to talk about it. And with that, I think I should actually just go ahead and hand things over to Sharon to present, Sharon and Jane, to present about what we know so far about our fiscal year 28 budget.
So I'm just going to do a little intro. Sharon really is the star of our evening, and she's put together most of the information in the packet. For your agenda, we're going to start with what's the structural deficit, how we got there, the early projections from our school department, the current status of budgeting, process for an override, options for an override. Sharon will get through the cash projections, the impact of a failed override, and part of what we have in here is a timeline, a post-timeline for public engagement and sort of what that would look like. One of the things that I'm interested in hearing from the board about, from all the boards, is a discussion on if you go forward with an override, how many options do you want to present? Some towns are offered 2 or 3 options at an override. So is there appetite for that? So that's where we are. We're not presenting department budgets tonight. Department heads are working on their level 1 budgets. I'm going to then take a pass at it, make cuts. That'll be a level 2 budget, and we'll present that. I'm thinking mid-June, probably early June, back to these boards. And so that gives us a little bit of runway, and we're working so we can refine where we are. And that'll be sort of that higher level FY28 kind of what department heads think they should need to operate, and then sort of like me saying, no, we're not doing this, and then that would be sort of the ideal budget, if you will. And then we'll be able to revise from there, depending on the appetite of these committees and the community. Okay. Thank you. And for anybody, it's fine. RCTV.
Right. Okay, so let's get started. So this is the slide that we show every town meeting to kind of give you an idea of where our reserves are at.
Are you on a town? What is the Wi-Fi?
I pulled it up from the email.
Okay, yeah, maybe I'll have to do that because I'm not getting anything. I'm sorry if I have the 8.
Leaving us with $8.746 million in free cash. That's without regeneration. FinCom asked me to come up with an estimate, and I stated we had a $2.3 million estimate because it definitely has declined. Our regeneration has declined as well as we have general fund stabilization funds that we maintain at 2.1, income reserves at $200,000. So just over $14 million. 10.6% of our net revenues for fiscal 27. slide shows
I guess we
that
can read the
free cash
captions.
used in blue and regeneration in red.
Can we
In
speak up?
past years, regeneration always exceeded, was very close to what we used, very close even in 23 and 24. But in 25, we started to have a big gap, using much more than we actually generated, and the free cash went down by about $2 million. And I would anticipate with the level of free cash that we used in 26, I would expect it to go down 4 to 5 million for this 26 as a conservative projection.
Excuse me, can you put her on a microphone or speak up? Because maybe we're under the fans or something.
There is no in-room amplification, so just speak up.
Yeah. Pretend we're your naughty kids yelling at us. We just can't hear you.
You can't,
Sorry.
you can't hear me. Okay.
You want me to go over this slide?
No,
Just from henceforth.
Just from there on.
Thank you.
Can I just take 1 second to acknowledge Karen Hurd, because we just called the order, so Karen's here as well. Is Sal online? Because he's wondering if he wants to.
No, it's all of us down here. We're fine.
Oh, yeah, so thank you. All right, thank you.
So this slide is one of 2 slides, and it's showing the structural deficit. Where did it come from? So in fiscal 26, we started the year using $6 million of free cash. And we do control our operating budget pretty much by a percentage, but those accommodated costs over the last 2 years have been out of control. So this actually shows you where did it come from. So basically, if you're reading from left to right, we're showing your actuals for every line of our accommodated costs, because that seems to be where our problem starts. For fiscal 20 through fiscal 25. And then the next column says net change from fiscal 20 to 25. So all we're doing there is taking fiscal 25, subtract from 20, and see how much it increased. And then next to it is the percentage of increase. And we would expect, we're approximately have budget 2.5 to 3% every year. That would be where we try and keep everything in sweet spots with this kind of budget. So this next column, expecting that change, is actually 6 years at 2.5%, 10%. And the last column is basically the amount of increase that we saw that is above expectations, and that's our structural deficit. So you can see that benefits is $3.2 million of that deficit. That makes up about $1 million, and then the energy about $412,000. And then in our financial area, we look at property casualty and veterans memorial, that's like 2 cents of veterans assistance, which is going down, but the property casualty is going up. We have 272 there. Spend looks very strange because the only piece of our spend is the out-of-district special benefits accommodated. So down below, I give you a little bit more information to make that make sense. It's a conscious effort on the school department, the school committee, and the school management, trying to spend a little bit more in district. So we have to pay out of district. So even though it looks like spend went down by $865,000, if you go to the bottom of the slide, you can see that actually spend overall is up $2.1 million over, $645,000 over our projection.
Stick this microphone closer to you, because I show it there, you on YouTube.
Okay.
Rob, are you picking it up, Sharon, okay? Yeah. Okay.
So down below, when we're talking about spend, I break it down to in-district, how much we spent in-district and out-of-district. We can see that the in-district is up $1.5 million over the 2.5% for 6 years. And the out-of-district is down $865,000 for a net total of $645,000 above. So actually contributing to the structural deficit really isn't actually being included in my numbers above. Just the negatives being included. So it just tells you the structural deficit is really more than this is just showing you how much is coming from accommodated cost. And so in vocational schools, we have the issue of the capital coming on for the Northeast Regional Vocational School. And so we have $464,000 there. So we definitely have some increase there at $502,000. Rubbish is just over 1.1, and
number handy, but so we saw that number, that 36% grand total for the accommodated cost change over the 5 years. What is the corresponding change for the rest of the budget?
Well, everything after that, it's always between 3 and 4%.
Right.
So that's what we
Yes.
control. The way we do our budget is we project our revenue and we project our accommodated costs first, because those things come off the top, capital, debt, benefits, our district special ed. What's left kind of dictates what our operating budget is. You know, we kind of fit it into whatever we have. So we've been pretty good about keeping it between 3 and 4%. I don't think I've ever seen it more
Right.
than 4%.
But just do an apples to apples comparison, like 3% compounded over 5 years is, I think, about 16% versus the 36. So
I focused on accommodated costs because it truly is
Right.
the area where we
Yes.
have less control. We definitely have more control when it comes to the union contracts. We've already put it into over that to some degree. Some things are out of our control. The benefits definitely go up this last couple of years, a little out of our control. We have some control that we can pull down the numbers and we did that this year. But there is definitely some things that are out of our control and they tend to be in that accommodated cost section. So this year is
Hi, just building a little bit on what Joe said, but in another direction. So you said that typically outside of accommodated costs, we are looking at like 3.5% to 4% increase a year. But the general public will often say, you know, when they hear you're on FinCom, well, our taxes are only allowed to go up 2.5% a year. But yet, even the part we're controlling, we're saying, oh, we can manage 3.5% to 4%. So is that because of our regeneration each year that we're allowed to increase more than 2.5%? Because I think the public thinks, oh, our budget shouldn't go up by more than our taxes go up.
generally just the property taxes, Prop 2.5 is just the property tax, but we do have new growth in there. So every year, our increase just for property tax is usually about 3.2% when you add in new growth. We're around 3.5% to 4% when you include all of our revenue sources.
Okay.
But it is hard because we try and keep those accommodated costs under control, and they have not at all moved up we gave to the last 5 years. So it's been rough.
So the new growth is, that other things is about 1% over the 2.5, if we're trying to explain this to people to say, we can go a little bit above, but
New
beyond
growth
that.
is something that didn't exist in the prior. So when you're calculating property taxes, whatever the levy was in the prior year increased by 2.5%, and then they add on the growth, things that are new that year. And so that ends up making the percentage go up more than 2.5%.
And just a last question, does new growth level off? I mean, we've done, you know, the smart growth downtown. New growth, I assume you mean new building, new growth in the tax base. That's not infinite, unless we start redeveloping everything to create new growth.
It's actually, it peaked a few years ago at $1.3 million and has been declining ever since.
Right, so it's we're not going to get what we got before. We're going to reach a limit. Thank you.
Just for the record, it also includes improvements people make to their homes. That is included.
It increases in assessed value, you mean, from that?
No, like somebody adds as an addition or something like that to their property, then that will increase their assessed value, and that goes into the growth as well.
Okay, thank you.
Ed?
Yeah, just to follow up back to your question, Joe, and maybe this is a question for you, Jane, but so if we're using accommodated costs, and that ends up being the bellwether, and then everything else grows by 3 or 4%, is there, and maybe this gets back to how you're going to show budgets going forward, but I'd be interested in if we're making decisions around what grows and what falls into the 3 and 4% and what falls out and what services those, that means. I don't know if I'm asking that question the right way, but like if the accommodated costs are growing at a higher clip, what I'm hearing is that we have to make other choices for the things that we control. And so what are we doing, like what are we foregoing, as decisions, and what will we kind of be further foregoing in either scenario if we do that?
So as we talk about departmental budgets,
Yes.
when we get to that part of this conversation in a few weeks, what you're at, just so I'm understanding, what you're
Yep.
asking is sort of in order to maintain accommodated costs, these spendings we can't control, what are we going to sacrifice on the other side?
Yep.
And it's very simple. It's people. It's very simple. The budget is people. So where we make those cuts, you know,
Well-
there's not enough in expenses. No, we haven't been cutting people. You can do attrition and things like that, but at the end of the day, you're gonna be looking at staffing because it's a $6.5 million structural deficit
Well, and I guess,
today.
and again,
We haven't gotten that far yet.
well, and I guess even just like given the last couple of years, and I know we go over this a little bit when we were doing the budget presentations year over year, but it might be worth it for us and the broader audience to know, even in the last couple of budgets, the things that kind of
Yes.
fell on the floor.
Yes.
And, you know, on the cutting room floor as far as what we could have done, didn't do, and how, and, because I think that a lot of the questions that we're going to get, you know, kind of to Mary Ann's point is, okay, well, here's where we are right now, but this just didn't happen yesterday. And so I think that's part of the story, is how long it takes and what we've been doing, and we've been kind of tacking towards this. But I think there's also, I think that would be helpful for folks to understand.
And yeah, we can do that.
Yep.
We definitely been cutting budgets for all of us. I mean, I think last year I had to cut 300,000 off budget. They just been trying to get to 2.75 year. The year before, I think it was like a couple 100,000. So there's definitely been a lot of cutting on the expense side to allow for our, you know, renewed contracts and all that. So there definitely is a number we can show them. It'd be impossible to add them back if we don't have our structural deficit. So,
Thank you.
can I go on? Okay. So this slide is the first page of the financial forecast. The upper quadrant where you see the percentages, that's the operating budget. That's how much the operating budget goes out after we take out accommodating costs. So for fiscal 28, we've been running very lean. The school and the town side have been running very lean. I think the departmental budgets on the school side were 19% last for fiscal 27, and I think 1.4% for the town. And so that's very, very lean, like extraordinary. So for the, if we're gonna go for an override, we'd like to have fiscal 28 be a fairly normal budget, not a overly lean budget. So I aimed for a 3.75% increase in the operating budget. Jane did ask the department heads to give a level 1 budget so we can talk about what was the type of things that need to be added back and prioritize those things. But really, even without adding anything, the structural deficit becomes very large, because what we see here is I end up putting down the bottom, you can see a note, $1.472 million in the community priority. Those are costs that did not exist prior, and they're mostly related to the new buildings. So 305,000 is new positions, facilities, and maintenance staff for those buildings. 125,000 for additional maintenance expenses. 125,000 school side facilities for building. And then we had asked the school department, you know, give us an idea of what for budget to be level service, what do you need to have that so we can take it. And they came back and they did it a bunch of 5.25%. They weren't adding any conditions, they were just doing level service. That is so much, they're taking 5.5% just to stay the level service and not have to cut people. And so what I did was 5.25% was not what I was planning. I was, okay, we're going to do that. So the difference is $917,639, which that little box is blocking, is basically put in there as an accommodated cost for the school department to get to the number that they need. So if this was the budget we went with and the override passed, the state get 3.75 plus it's 917 to get into the ISO number. And that's how I chose to do it, because I didn't want to put 5 to the bottom top and give us both sides. That seemed like a good thing. So in total, there was about $989,000 of new costs related to the new buildings. And some of that cost, what's there in the community priorities is listed. Some of the other costs that are there already in accommodated costs, because they're already categories, is property and casualty at $230,000 for the 2 buildings. And then there's about 125 for 195 for the energy costs for the new buildings. So there's a lot of money built into this budget that did not exist prior. So it doesn't help us keep that number down. In fact, it expands it a bit. So in order to do this type of budget, a typical 3.75% budget, it's a $10 million deficit. And so, so that was the see. Now, if you tend to have some level of regeneration, I think it's usually our safe number, but I would hope that we get us down to it if we have these free cash going forward to a more reasonable number. So I would say that the lowest I'd like to see free cash override to maybe $2.5 million. So that would mean that just to fill the gap, $7.5 million. If we were to go to $2 million to give us works towards the normal side, we used to be able to have $2 million in free cash to be our law. It would be an $8 million override. That's just be filling the hole that we came for the new buildings. So like that, the new buildings are included in that $1 million, but not the it's just basically a 3.75% budget plus the additional cost basically against the budget they need and the new building costs. So I wanted to build those in for the whole year. Like I know that those buildings probably won't have all that cost for the whole year, but if I don't build it into fiscal 28, then I'm gonna come up with extra money in fiscal 29's budget. So I felt it best if we're gonna ask for an override, let's put all of the costs related to those new buildings a full year's worth in 28. So that's why that number is so high, because even though we probably won't have those new buildings in place for fiscal 28, I wanted that number to have a full year of the additional staff, a full year of PD, a full year of the insurance, because I don't know exactly when they'll have everything up there.
To follow on, so you say that's just getting us, whatever, 7.7 plus the 2.5 in fiscal year 28. But when we think of overrides, we're not thinking of an override that's going to get us through 1 year. So I'm looking across that line and you're thinking FY30, we would need 12 million?
Yeah, so that's why I'm showing this. It's like to get multiple years, you've got to give some thought to that as well. Yeah.
I think the public, our last override, we got a lot of time out of it, but say people want to get at least 4 or 5 years. I mean, this doesn't go beyond to 31 and 32. Is that why this packet has a number of like a $14 million override in it? I mean, is that?
Just because it seems like it's turning up like
Yeah.
a certain amount every year.
Let's just get the worst case out there.
I know that all those accommodated costs have settled down, but I can't. I mean, we're still getting guidance from Maya, even though we reworked our benefits to save money, that we still could expect a double-digit number. And so built into those accommodated costs is almost 10% for benefits. It could not come to fruition that way, which would be helpful, but we have to do the worst-case scenario. We're doing this so far in advance. So energy costs, if you look at fiscal 28, we have a few years back, we had signed a natural gas contract that was a 30% increase, and that ends at the end of, I think it's May of 2027, and then it goes up by 16%. So I wish I could tell you everything is hunky-dory, but I just don't know when things will level off. And then we also have fuel costs going way up, and so, we have to budget to just put gas in the cars, it's going to be a lot more. So,
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Thanks, Joe. The packet that you're using there is different than what's online. So online is a newer version of that with numbers that are different.
you're seeing it there.
So you have 5/18/26 at 3:27 p.m. Online is 5/19/26 at 10:04. So it's a day later, and the number at the bottom right is 3.99% of 4.
That's what we have in our packet,
Outdated.
3.99.
Oh,
Jackie, was that what you said?
So she had sent it out again after I updated the packet, because you did have, originally I had an estimate in there for property and casualty, and we reached out to Maya to give us a more solid number, something that we can add in so we feel like.
So is this the latest or this the latest?
Are you looking at the email today?
No,
Yeah.
It's tie into that.
No, this one's older.
Well, I have
Where do you
3.99.
see the data
Is that today's email?
Yeah.
Left.
Yeah, you can see, go up on the top left,
So the one on the website for
Right
this
there.
meeting is.
519.
Yeah,
Yeah.
10:04.
It just has a property credit.
But this spreadsheet, this PowerPoint.
That says 518.
that has 4 and I have 3.99,
This
so.
sheet, this slide must not have been updated when other things were updated, because this is, so the PowerPoint in the packet
Yep.
has the date that Chris is talking about, the 5/19.
What is the number for the financial?
We have 3.99 in the bottom corner of our packet.
So Sharon, what was your, which line did,
The financial number
the financial number for which year?
for 28.
FY '28 financial, $1,495,000.
Okay, so mine is, this is PowerPoint hasn't.
Got it, and that has 1,365.
Do you want me to send you this?
Yeah, you can share that. I actually have the financial.
It's immaterial, the difference.
The point is.
Yeah, I mean,
that
that's one small thing, but I guess if everything else is different.
From Lyda, and it was a lot higher than what I had. So I felt like it was important for us, if we're trying to show a full year for those new buildings, that I would need to put that extra money. I think it was $130,000 difference in there. So, just to get the general idea, but what I did is the overall numbers don't really change because I took that $130,000 out of benefits because I didn't want to go over that $10 million. I didn't want to make that number get even bigger. So I brought the benefits down just so slightly because I do think that the changes we made in kind design might have a positive impact. We may not see it.
Do you want to have Jack pull up the new projection?
It's 10,000 and 17,000.
It's not, it's a shadow.
No, it's not.
It's just difficult to follow along. Like,
Right.
I'm seeing 399 and I'm wondering where the price difference, and it looks like that 530 changed by a couple dollars, but like, just for cohesiveness for anybody that might.
Yeah, because that financial number is just increased by 2%, which is, I think, just because it's a round number, not because we know what that's going to increase. So that's, that number, because the base is different, once you increase it by 2%, the offset doesn't exactly offset 2 years later the way it does. I understand that in FY '28, the bottom line is the same,
This is your town meeting argument.
but FY '30, the bottom line is slightly different.
It's not the size. So what you're showing is just the first page of this vantage point. So 1,495,000, so that's correct. So the slide you put up, we didn't change. So that is because of that property casualty insurance increase that I found from that gave for me last minute. So that we could kind of give us a fully loaded for other buildings. So, that, I wasn't going to stay on the slide very long anyway, I just wanted to show you where that number is coming from. So, we'll go back to the PowerPoint. Then I'm ready to show you.
What's your question?
Yeah, once you get back to the slide that you said you didn't want to spend any time on, I have a question about it. Sorry. I'll wait for it to get back up on the screen for everybody. Almost there. There we are. So, this is maybe a basic question you're taking for granted, but I want to make sure this is sort of asked and answered out loud. My understanding, like, correct me if I'm wrong, so is it correct that if we have a, say, $8 million override in FY '28, that just reduces the free cash usage by $8 million, so it would be a $2 million free cash usage? And likewise, every subsequent year would be reduced by 8 million times 1.025?
It would just depend, like, we got into the situation because things were brought outside of what we afforded, and brought 2.5. So you could be in a situation, let's say we did to 8, let's just say we go with 8, and we go bring it down to 2 for fiscal 28. In fiscal 29, we would probably be adding to our free cash use to buy years, to use 5 years into the future, if we wanted to lose that number. So you would have to be anticipating that we would do something similar just to get more time out of the money, because the money we're asking for just to fill the gap is a lot of money. So, the bigger the number, I think the higher likelihood that it might not pass. And so it is one of those things that we might need to go a little lower, because a bigger number may not pass. So we might be in the same situation we're in, where if costs continue to grow outside of Prop 2.5, we may need to use a little bit more free cash every year.
But I mean, the impact, I'm trying to understand, so obviously, I haven't done this for any overrides yet. So I'm trying to understand how to read these tables that we look at every year in the presence of an override. Like, and my understanding is it reduces, the override amount reduces the amount of free cash that has to be used by
Yes.
roughly that much. Yeah, okay, that's,
So if nothing changed and you're looking at fiscal 29, and I've got to agree with, if everything worked out that way, then I would probably have to increase my free cash to be able to do the numbers that we have on the screen. So from whatever number it is, what if say it's 2 million, I would have to increase it to cover 5.875. So that's why it's better to go with a bigger number to give us some growth room. But it's hard to imagine what kind of number we pass. It's hard.
Sharon, so out of the free cash doesn't include regeneration though, correct? Or am I?
Number that's up there?
Yeah,
That's just how much is being used, would need to be used to balance this budget.
right, but then we'd also have regeneration, right? And,
Yeah, regeneration happens every year, and, yeah.
but it would lower the need, but if we, if we raised, just say 8 million or 7 million, and we didn't need it, the whole amount because of regeneration, then the regeneration's gonna grow. It's what happened the last time, we'll start regenerating more, which will delay.
It would help.
Yeah, so,
Because in the first year of an override, a lot of the costs we're building a full year in, and maybe you're not gonna get a full year of new employee, or a full year of insurance, or a full
Yeah.
year of engineering the building. But just so that we don't have to find the money in another year, like we're gonna build a full year, that is going to make the regeneration higher in that first year of an override. Because I've built in costs that I kind of know are not gonna be that full year, so that we have them as a baseline number for the future years.
and also interest on the cash we're sitting.
I'm sorry?
Also, the cash we're sitting on, the interest on that will be higher too. I mean, that was sort of the surprise the last, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, we're getting
Yeah.
good returns on the money
Yeah.
we have invested, yes. So any money we would have in free cash would be earning more money.
question, Karen back there?
On this slide, the state website claims that we're getting about $29 million. Chapter 90 and the fair share, I think is part of that. Where does that get reflected in there?
It's just under intergovernmental revenues and state aid.
What was the question?
We show state aid as a total one number for the whole, yeah.
So for FY 26, the state is claiming that we got $29 million. So those numbers don't, that's part of the reason why I'm asking, because those numbers don't add up to that. They're saying total chapter 70 was 28.5 million rounded. And chapter 90 was 1.1 million. So but those numbers don't. So is that intergovernmental? Is that what you said?
Yes, that's the state. I'm not sure.
It's hard to, I don't want you to recite a URL, especially because no one can probably hear you on the mic in the back room anyway, but I would love to hear the source for where that's coming from.
Yeah.
Also, FY 26 versus FY 27.
So we're,
Yeah.
yeah, and it didn't drop. Thank everything's been going up. So it's under the fair share, if you Google, what are communities getting, what is my community getting? Fair share supporting local education. It's on mass.gov, I can share with finance committee. And then the other question I have is, so the next 18 months, year, couple of, going across 2 fiscal years, we're gonna get significant reimbursements for one of our building projects. How do those get accounted for in the budgeting process?
So those aren't being accounted for yet, anywhere, because we don't know exactly what we're getting yet. And they usually come on, are you talking about the rebates for buildings?
Well,
Yeah.
and we're getting reimbursed as
That
time
comes
goes
at the
along.
end, and so we have the tax consultant that's gonna be helping identify how much we'll be getting back. So it's not shown anywhere here, because we don't know when we will get them.
That was the geothermal credits, yeah, the energy credits. But what about, I'm just wondering how you account for the fact that as Killen goes on, we get reimbursements. As we go. We're gonna get huge reimbursements the next 18 months.
Right, and that affects how much we're gonna borrow in our second tranche, because it affects the cash flow. Correct.
Oh, you're asking about the MSBA reimbursement for the actual construction?
Yes.
So the project itself does not sit in the general fund, it's not in these numbers. It
Okay.
sits in its own fund all by itself.
Okay.
We borrow the money goes into that fund, and then the MSBA reimburses us every time I do a reimbursement, that money goes in. So
So
it sits all by itself,
all right.
it's not part of these numbers.
Okay. All right, so it won't inflate free cash artificially at any point. Okay.
No, I mean, we earn interest on all the money we borrow, so that helps, but it's not, the capital project itself is holding the actual money, we only get the interest while holding the money that we borrow, we will get the interest. So that's helpful. And so we have been relying more on the interest income than we ever have, because things are so out of control. And I'm hoping that we're, able to continue to get the numbers that we're projecting, but
Does that go back to Mark's question earlier about the interest on our free cash, or is that also separate? Anything that comes from interest in the money we borrowed for our buildings, that's also kept separate from this?
unless there's something that says the interest stays with something, if we borrow money, if it doesn't stay in the capital project, the interest actually goes to the general fund. Even though the money goes into a capital project fund, any interest we earn.
Okay, so it's reflected up there.
It's definitely reflecting things.
So they'll be higher for the next few
Yeah.
years. Okay, thank you.
I wanna talk about one thing about intergovernmental revenues. And we'll look at what the state says they're paying us.
That sounds really loud.
Yeah, no,
That sounds great.
But that's okay, because we tend to project low for state revenue. The reason you project low is because sometimes budgets come in late. Sometimes we haven't had 9 C cuts in a long time. But if you've ever been through 9 C cuts, the trauma is real. So, has anybody here been through 9 C cuts? I have.
What a 9C cut is.
So that's what we cut the budget in the middle of the year, when you have unexpected earnings. We have the fair share that's passed. It's better to project low and then realize more state aid, because then you can provide it. But to your point, before we're asking for an override, let's have a very clear reflection of where we are with state aid. But we want to project it into the future. She's just projecting 2.5% growth.
Yeah, so they're proposing, just over 3% for this year.
That would,
All right, well, I think-
I'd love to see it, but I want us to stay
Yeah.
just conservative.
I'd just like to keep it all transparent, and if that's the approach, that's what we're doing. I keep thinking back to that crazy, free cash surprise that we got a couple years ago, off by a few million, that was crazy, and I don't want anything like that to happen while we're asking the taxpayers to pony up. That's all. Thank you for answering those questions.
Jeff?
Follow up on the last question, on the cash regeneration, do you know roughly what that is like over the last couple of years?
So we averaged, prior to the last year, about $6 million of regeneration, because some have to be over, we had some high numbers. So it was averaging about 6%, and it had fallen down to 4, I think, last year. So, I feel like as we bring our budget down to a leaner area, there's less to regenerate. We're going into lean as possible, so you're just naturally going to see less regeneration. So just using more free cash, then, you know, using more free cash, if we want to see free cash go up, we actually have to generate more than we're using. If we're using them now, it's just the high numbers, which more than what we ever average. So we've been planning to decline our reserves and using it to fill the hole. But yeah, you know, I feel like it's going to only get worse because this year we lose more than I ever expected.
We'll take us through later in the presentation, but the free cash projection.
Oh, I gave that to you. I typically do all that. And I could look at everything.
But like recently, the source of our free cash has been either like the interest income because rates have stayed higher than we expected, you got a big cash balance, right? But also like attrition, if positions aren't filled, you know how much comes from attrition or.
I mean, I feel like a lot of it comes from the outside attrition, those positions remain open for a while, but I'm seeing a decline there, just in general, you know. So I feel like we don't have the regeneration that we had in the past. So even though we can say our average is about 6 million, we're nowhere near 6 million in the last couple of years. So I would say that, you know, I'm expecting fiscal 26 to be horrible for free cash because I'm going to see that number go down by now it's just not going to afford it.
We finally don't have questions. You keep going.
Oh, do we have more questions?
No, I said you finally keep going.
So,
It's
this
the fun
information
slide.
comes from the DLS website. It's the override calculator. You can put in the community work we did, we live in, and it will give you three different levels of override cost for an average home. And it also gives you, which I think I put in the packet, you know, all the different valuations of what that would be for 7, 8 million. And I showed it up to 14 million, which, I mean, I don't know. I mean, seeing how the number is so big, if we want it to last a period of time, we do have to entertain some bigger numbers. But those kind of frighten me to look at, honestly. So a $7.5 million override for the average $944,000 home that already has a tax bill of over $10,000 would be an $850 increase to their tax bill every year. 8 million is 906. So you can see it's just, you know, where we did the 2 debt exclusions, it's hard to imagine that we could get one with bigger numbers there because the timing of this is not the best. It's not ideal. But I give you the numbers just because it's not up to me to be asking, and you guys need to know what the information is. So that's what's there is our potential override amounts that we'll be looking at. But the structural deficit's too large for us to really, you know, go lower than that. So I think the 7.5 is the baseline, and if you're going to say we need to go below that, bottom of the number, that's the bottom of the number.
Not to beat a dead horse, because I know I asked this at town meeting as well, but just for the public's benefit, that FY26 average bill shown there does not yet include the first tranche of Killam payments, right?
No, because that's fiscal 26, and the first tranche of debt hits in 27.
And that's
So
another $800 or $900 on the average house, right?
I think from what I borrowed, it's more like 500 or 600.
Oh, okay.
So you're not seeing the whole amount. The first tranche is not, it is not the full amount.
But I mean, just the public who sees this has to really mentally add another 500 to everything here. And if they decide to pass CPA, and another 1%, was it, or 1.5%?
So
1% on top, less the 100 value of the house. Okay.
It's definitely less than I do. It makes me nervous, honestly. So.
Is that 500 just the first round of debt?
Yeah.
So this.
So, knowing that we're looking to do the fiscal 28, if we can do it over for fiscal 28, what we had talked about doing is the second tranche. I think that the cash flows that we currently have say that the money that we borrow will last us to June of 2027. And so we need to borrow around that time. But what we had talked about doing to avoid the full principal payment is doing a short-term borrowing, a 1-year borrowing, so that only the interest portion of what we borrow would hit tax bill of fiscal 28. So we can't avoid it all together. We can if we, depending on when we borrow. If we can get somewhere into the middle of fiscal 27, fiscal 28 when we borrow, then we the story. But we really do have to borrow in June or July of 2027, we're going to have at least interest payments there. So that's kind of, it would be nice to avoid all the interest payments, but all the numbers you're seeing, I'm projecting that would have an interest payment, kind of made that adjustment, so that we're not having that second tranche of debt hit in 28 along with it. That just doesn't seem feasible.
But you would ban it, correct?
A ban on short-term borrowings.
Which I know we did talk about in our retreat, remind me though, so if we banned it for the 1 year, then you borrow it for FY 29, the rest, or was it?
So we had talked about, one of the things that we had go on was at the library we borrowed for, is we borrowed all the money up front. And then we had this extra money that was just sitting there. When you do a ban, some people will do the bans until the project is complete, because then they'll only borrow what they need, because the project is complete when they borrow. So we could be closer to the end of the project and not have as much excess sitting there, right? We'd be more aware of all the additional change orders and things like that that are going on with the projects, and we're able to nail down the exact amount of the borrow. It won't be necessarily perfect, because the lids are actually borrowing, of course, when the lids are done, but it would actually be a lot less, because borrowing in 5 years, borrowing for the customer has to be
I'm gonna stick this right in your face. And it's nothing but love. But nobody can hear me, Mom.
So I have to, I need to.
I know, but they're telling me. I'm getting the news from the police chief. Who's
So if
watching.
I'm understanding correctly, it will be the big jump for about $500 for the average single family home, and then you can override that with and then a slower increase with the ban interest.
Yeah, I mean, if depending on what you currently borrow, I would expect to see this was 29, maybe you see that in this sort of borrowing. But you would see interest payments on the second tranche.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, just the extra money, the rest maybe we could have lost our AAA bond rating by then.
So, not necessarily. Part of the reason I'm even entertaining a short-term borrowing is that you don't do a bond rating call for a short-term borrowing. And so, given what happened this year and how much free cash we had to use at April town meeting, I don't feel confident that if we went to borrow in July, that we would stay AAA. So, a ban would avoid that. And then we have, at least we'd be able to say to S&P, hey, we have an override pass and we're going to start rebuilding our, so there'd be a chance for us to actually recover. And especially with the first year, we'll probably have more regeneration by the time we go to borrow. It can be, recovered to the point that we're still in the 15 to 20% range. So, I mean, given that we had such a rough year this year, I don't know what we have to project when we borrow, if we could actually
So, just more following back to Melissa's questions about which tax bill changes occur when. So the 600-ish, the first tranche of borrowing, that hits the tax bills in FY 27. The impacts we're looking at here would be hitting tax bills in FY 28. And then if you manage to avoid borrowing, use a ban to postpone the second tranche, that would be FY 29. Obviously, I don't want to pay the money regardless, but I do like taking it over 3 years instead of all at once. So I appreciate that effort. Another question about that. You said something about like the interest costs for doing the short-term borrowing. Is that included in your estimate of what is needed in FY 20? Oh, that's good. Okay. It's not this amount plus the interest in FY 28.
We've been thinking very
plus the rest of
strategically
it.
about
Okay.
how to do this. It's less than ideal. It's
Well, but
yes.
the part where the cost of a short-term borrowing is included in this and is not on top of this
It's built in.
is a
Sounds like a
small
planted
blessing.
question.
I will-
Sounds like a planted question. Sounds like that was a planted question, Joe.
No, my ignorance is 100% genuine.
Do we have questions on the side?
Sorry.
This side.
I don't see.
Right up there.
Continue.
100%.
Okay. So this side is
bad enough.
So we also have to plan and think about what if an override doesn't pass and what does that do to our budget? And so that's what this slide is, and it's not pretty. What I did for this to come up with these numbers is I took out the community priority for the school. I reduced the capital by about $240,000, so bringing it down from the 5% we normally do. And I got that if we use the same amount of free cash that we're using for fiscal '27, our budget can't even go up 1%. It goes up 0.9%. So I feel like every option you see there will include some sort of staffing cuts, because there's just no way we're going to be able to pull that off with that kind of a number. Unless somehow we got our unions to agree to a 0 for a year. I don't know how you pull that off. But, and then it just gets worse from there. It gets worse from there, because like 5 million, you're now having a reduction in your budget. 4 million, 2.1% reduction, and a 3 million is a 3.28% reduction. It's not a pretty picture. It's a lot of jobs. Do you have a question?
Yep. So Jane, on your end, is that when you start to present budgets in weeks' time, will you have solutions and what that looks like?
We'll have high-level solutions, so I'm not going to identify
No.
like exact people.
Thank you. Yes, that's helpful.
Right, no. I asked Sharon the other day to come up with an average cost for a person. So that is an average salary, and it's an average benefits amount. Okay? And so that we'll start to look at, on an average, it would cost this. Now, some things we would look at are, the least harm options,
Yep.
right? The least harm.
Yep.
So we're gonna look at retirements and not filling certain positions as best we can on the town side. We'll ask the school department to do a similar exercise. Tom's here. And that is a morbid exercise, but
Yep.
that's where we are. So we'll start to look at what does that look like in terms of head count. We'll also look at operational expenses and things that, it'll look like certain maintenance contracts may get cut back. And so certain, how do we maintain buildings? Maybe it'll look at how we staff buildings, like do we keep the library open as many hours? Do we keep the recal center open as many hours if it's not being rented? Like, we'll look at those options too, sort of the do less harm as we can.
The other-
Is that what you want to see?
That's exactly it. I think that's the other side of the coin that I think people are
Before
going
I
to
take your question, it's something I wanted to mention here. Is these numbers include leaving the new buildings full cost for the full year in there. Another option would be to figure out how many months we need the new building cost in there and bring, we might bring our operating budget up a little, but I just left it there because the 2 debt exclusions have passed. So I feel like those costs kind of go along with it. But we could, for fiscal '28, take out the unneeded portion, and then for fiscal '29, build that budget up. Yes.
So a question that I remember I asked this at the previous override and attempt, and it never was addressed. Do we know what percentage of our employees don't work full-time but work between 20 and 30 hours? Because one of the things I noticed at the time of the previous override that Reading did differently than, say, Wakefield, is we offered full benefits at 20 hours a week, whereas Wakefield, you had to be 30. And I'm not sure, maybe that's more school personnel, like paras, but I don't know how many personnel we have that fit into that bucket, and I'm not trying to say let's kick everyone out of our benefits, but our accommodated costs, so what's the reason for the structural deficit? And I don't know if there's ever been an analysis of a personnel breakdown, what percentage are getting benefits because they work in Reading, but would not get them, say, in Wakefield, which requires 30 hours a week to get benefits. So
I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, but it's certainly numbers I could get for you.
it just, I don't know if it would represent much savings, and maybe we get better people because we pay benefits at 20 hours. But if we're doing something distinctly different from neighboring towns and we're in tough times, and say an override doesn't pass, that's something I think we should
So we do
look
have
at.
something that's unique about Reading in terms of getting into our retirement system. So in other communities, we had this issue come up with Paris. You have to work like a total of 1,900 hours. Right? It's like this set number of hours. So Paris and cafeteria workers, they don't meet the criteria to be in our retirement. So they can have benefits at 20 hours. But when they retire, they're not getting benefits because they're not in our retirement system. And so that brings down our numbers in comparison when we're looking at communities that offers it. Anybody who works 20 hours can be in the retirement system. We don't have that here. And it's kind of unique. I don't feel like a lot of communities have that. And it's been in place for a long time. But the post-retirement benefits is lower in Reading because we don't have part-time people in our retirement system.
And what does that impact? Is that part of the accommodated costs that you're considering?
It's really
for
more,
Reading?
yeah, it's in the benefits section still. We do try and fund OPEB, those post-employment benefits, and we haven't really started to fund them at any real level. Like it's always about 500,000. We have extra money, maybe it's 800,000. But once the pension is fully funded, it's always been the plan to now go hard on that liability. But our liability is reduced drastically by the fact that we do not have part-time people in our retirement system.
Okay.
But that's, just to be clear, that's, from the town's point of view, savings we already have. That's not
Yes,
something
exactly.
else that we
She was saying that
which is
others,
right, that's
so we
in
do,
contrast with,
it
like,
is kind of, we're letting people in at 20 hours and something to be thought about, but in the long run,
Yeah.
we're not paying for them
Yeah,
in retirement.
Question. I just would say, I see Sean on Zoom. I'm
Quick
not-
question, following up on that.
Okay, I'll get to you, Sean, next.
Shane, quick question, and it's for Jim. I know that the town offers an opt-out incentive for folks to leave our health insurance. And since this is the biggest line item on the accommodated cost, has that number, I think it used to be 4,500, has that been revisited? Is it any appetite to like bump that up so to incentivize some of the folks to get out from our insurance and go their spouses, for example?
Yeah.
There's a lot of incentives for the one spend.
Sure, well, we just did that. We actually just increased that, and the select board approved it with our new PEC agreement. We increased the opt-out number. I don't have it off the top of my head, we can put that in, it's in the packet from, and it's online. So the opt-out number has increased to make it more appealing to not take our health insurance and to go with your spouse or.
And we're offering more health insurance options, so by doing plan design changes, they made a select plan available, which is 13% lower than our HMO plan. And we built in relativity to make the PPO more expensive than the HMO to try and get more people to an HMO plan, because right now the relativity is too close. People are like, well, for this small amount of money, I'm going to go with the PPO, it's just better. When we built in that relativity over 3 years, like a 15% difference between the PPO and the HMO, naturally many people are going to go to the less expensive plan. So there's a lot of savings we could see, over the next few years based on those plan design changes that we put in place for fiscal
This
27.
is the first time they've had a plan design in 35 years.
So
With our- Yeah, 35 years, I'm not kidding.
They didn't make any significant changes on
The literal
anything.
difference between a PPO and the HMO per month for an employee is a cup of coffee. Not at Starbucks either.
I wish Jax could capture my face for the minutes.
Yeah, so the PEC came to the table and worked with us, aggressively to make more options, to make it less expensive for the town and for the employee. Because the old legacy policy we had, which had no deductible, had started to become significantly expensive. And Blue Cross Blue Shield excluded a class of drugs, GLP-1, which are very popular drugs. So that's excluded for all of our employees and pretty much anybody in Blue Cross Blue Shield. And that still did not bring down health insurance costs to a palatable amount. The PEC was certainly motivated to go to plan design, and the new plans have low but deductibles, which they have not had for 35 years. So, it's a significant change that we hope will drive real savings. We're projecting $3.9 million over the term of the contract, which is a 3-year agreement.
So even with those changes, we're still predicting a 10% increase in
Well, in 27, you're showing the savings already in there, and then they're telling us that we still are opposed to the potential of a 10% increase over the next year.
The premiums.
The premium going
Yeah,
up,
premium.
yeah. I mean, the other thing too is if we hadn't done plan design, they had quoted us 10.86 even after they took the GLP-1s off of the, so I mean, the plan design brought us down to somewhere in that 5% range, and we got a 5%, 5.17% savings, so it brought it under 5%. So we were really lucky. The PEC was so cooperative and came to the table looking to save money as well. We all are on the same team, and we worked really well together, and I think it will produce savings, especially in this tight economy. I think people are going to go towards less expensive plans if they can, and I think, but we don't know what's going to happen. I would hope that we see more people moving to HMO plans and things like that, and that we would start seeing more savings, that we won't experience the 10%. But when Maya gives us that advice, that's the only advice we have when we're projecting out our numbers. And it's really early to be looking at fiscal 28. I don't have anything, any new information to go
We're not
on.
going to get any numbers on what to project for FY '28 for our health insurance until late January, and they won't get us a specific number for the town until February, which is their normal timeline. So we're doing our best to project out reasonably. But yeah, so the plan design is huge, and that does save us money, and that does increase the opt-out funds as well. It also increased the amount, Andrew, you'll appreciate this, it increased the amount of time that a retiree has. So they don't have to buy back within 10 years, they can go 15 years, which will often get them to medics. Do you know what I mean? So that saves us, so people don't feel like, oh, I gotta buy back into the system at a higher rate because I'm a younger retiree. So it saves us some money in that regard too.
So once they're in MEDEX, they're outside of our risk pool, so which makes our health insurance cheaper.
Well, medics is, we cover our medics as well. We
Yeah, I
have
know, but
medics plan.
it takes them off of our HMO or
Right.
It takes them from
PPO,
the-
yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
which is more expensive, more
Right.
cost effective for both the town and
Much better
retired.
for us,
Yeah.
let's say.
So I know Sean had a question.
Uh,
Marcus.
Yes, Sean had a question on Zoom, if you want to go ahead.
But thanks, Joe. I just, Marianne's question was a very fair one about part-time employees and health benefits. I did want to just highlight, though, that in the case of paras, which is certainly one of the big contributors to that, that's not really just a policy decision. That's in the collective bargaining agreement. And obviously we're going into those negotiations later this year, but there's probably not much in the collective bargaining agreement I think they would fight harder to hold on to than that. So just want to highlight that complication.
Right. Any good fair.
So my question was on the medical. Is there any OPEB savings too?
You mean?
Other post-employment benefits, like
Are
will we
these
see
plan
savings
changes that
there?
will lead to OPEB savings?
I would imagine so, because they're using, what our actual rates of increase are year over year for our health insurance to project out the future costs. But I do think that they must have some inflationary numbers in there for the future to get us to, it's all like actuary math. It's not the typical math you would see. They would build in all kinds of assumptions to get to the future number. So yeah, there'd probably be savings because our insurance would be just generally less expensive. The starting off number that they're going to inflate is a lower number. And grow as fast, yeah.
Joe?
Like on the retirement side, I know my favorite question to you, but like for the pension board, could we ask them to go a couple more years until we fully fund that? I
So
know
we
they
did
have
push
to
out,
do that.
we did
Yeah,
push
I know we
out,
did it
yeah.
before, but to do
So-
it again, because we don't have to be fully funded, and
We could,
participants are still
we
going
could,
to pay,
we
but-
could. It's just I only get that opportunity every 2 years. They do a full valuation every 2 years, which comes with a funding schedule, fully funds the liability. And with every valuation, there's all these changes in assumptions. There's a change in the mortality table. People are living longer, and so it increases their liability. If the stock market isn't doing well, you might have losses that they're trying to cover. If we want to reduce our discount rate, which is our expected return, that comes with a very hefty price tag. So we've had a lot of changes that are always being incorporated into our valuation, which have been forcing us to push outward on the actual payoff. We were supposed to be 2029, then it's 2030. I think the date is 2031, but it's technically in 2032. So I feel like I'm only one member of the retirement board. It's a 5-member board, so it's a group decision on what we do and what funding schedule we select. But I made it very clear how painful the last funding schedule was at 8.3. It really came at the worst possible time. Everything was blowing up, and it was one of our bigger numbers. It was 8.3%, and it was disproportionately hitting the general fund at like 16% that first year. So it really hurt. And so I made sure that we go in the opposite direction, going down from where we were. So we got down to 5.3, but still a little bit higher. I would prefer it be lower, but it kept us still in a reasonable time paying off that liability. You know, we can switch gears, we can stay on that timeline. So we'll just see. But every 2 years we have that opportunity, and that just happens. So we have 2 years to have that conversation again.
So Sean's question made me think of another complication, which I think is captured here, but I want to make sure. So looking at the, see, we're still all looking at the slide that Sharon didn't want to spend time on. The one that had the $10 million free cash usage number. So.
You want to bring up the actual financial forecast?
Well, so actually the number that I was going to call out is like we have, you know, the FY27 budget is a 3% operating budget increase, and we're projecting 3% for FY29 and FY30. For FY28, we're projecting 3.75%. And
we could do a lower number. I just feel like the last couple of years have been.
So, and actually, my question is, this is kind of this one is a leading question, not a planted question, Ed. But like, is it even possible to do lower than that, given that that is the year in which everyone's contract and their brother's contract is getting renegotiated?
It is possible because none of we would be negotiating.
Well, okay, we'd be negotiating, but then, right, that's
But I feel like I wanted to start with a healthy budget to start with, and then if an override fails, we need to entertain all options, right?
Well, okay.
Or we could even be looking at, as building this, I could even bring that down to a lower number and see what we can get to, you know, in terms of bringing that 10 million down to a lower number. It just doesn't go down that much by a 4%.
Yeah, I understand. That's the thing, is that like if the, you know,
I just feel like
going
over
from
the last
3.75 to 3.5, you know, doesn't change the 10 million, but causes us to deal with a strike. That seems like a poor bargain. I'd rather just pay the 10 million.
And I also felt like the last couple of years were very different. We did very lean budgets for fiscal 27. So this would allow them to add a little bit back of what they've had to cut.
Yeah.
We're back on this slide. I've got a question on it. So back to Karen's point, I mean, I hope the online FY29, I'm sorry, FY26 payment from the state is 29 million. I hope that's accurate, but I'm having a hard time believing that's even close, considering if you guys, or you, Sharon, increase it by 2.5% each year, you were basing your FY27 on that when you made this. So that seems, that's
I
a
update
huge
the
difference.
financial forecast once I know the final number. So
Yeah.
it's always built up with the actual number. So that's why I'm a little concerned. I don't know where that number is coming from.
I mean, it's like,
It's not bringing, yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. If we were to get that, I'd be thrilled. I've not heard those numbers, so I'd have to go searching and look at what she's looking at.
So I can, the wonders of modern technology, Karen emailed me the link that she was talking about, so I have it on my computer now. The row for Reading says Northeast Metropolitan, Reading. So I'm wondering if that 29 million is the Reading
talking about
number
the-
plus the, like, I'm wondering if the vast majority of that is this chapter 70 is for the school.
Oh, some part for the regional schools that are
Yes.
using?
That might be it. This doesn't, I don't know how to make this, thing show the town without the text.
Is that the number you're looking at that she referred to?
Yes, that's the 29, but it's
I've never heard a number that high for chapter 70, so.
it doesn't,
And
yeah.
I'm on the other one.
question, you can follow up.
Okay, all right.
I'm seeing 12 million on this, which seems more in line with what.
Knows the number.
The chapter 70 number for FY27 is 12 million
Okay, cool.
So it actually went down for 17.
What'd you say?
No, that's
That's
part
overall
of-
state aid.
That's all state aid,
all
including
state aid.
Oh, this is,
Jefferson
What they
and
call the
Russell.
cherry sheet. Everything
Right,
on the
all
cherry
state
sheet. So
aid.
it'd be
When did
chapter
that come
70, veterans, everything that we get in our state aid.
Right, okay, cool. So yes, sorry, trying to answer Melissa's question.
Yeah, no, thank you, I appreciate it.
And then does that number also include like reimbursements we get for elections and things like that?
Because those are grants and their own, yeah.
All right. Now that we have thoroughly taken you off of your planned presentation,
I'm pretty much done. Whatever questions you have, we can go back to anything you want. But I feel like it's important to kind of, get what's that minimum number that we need to ask for to move things forward.
yep.
So part of what we would move to next.
Jane, I bet they can't hear you because you are nowhere near a mic.
It doesn't amplify at all.
No, the room is not amplified. There's a microphone in the ceiling right over there in the middle of the room, and that's what's picking us up. And then these are being picked up by RCTV. That green light in the ceiling is the microphone. So there's no in-room amplification. There's only in-room amplification at the library, which we booked, and town hall. Okay.
Please.
Yeah, so we're interested to know what kind of an override folks are interested in, how many options. We're seeing 1 option, 2 options, 3 options. We have some information in the packet, but if you want to stop sharing so Jackie can share, and move to the override communication and proposed timeline that our Cracker Jack operations team sitting in the second row has prepared this evening.
It's pretty good.
And then page 3, there it is. Thank you, Jackie.
So there's like
So,
one meeting
I
where
will
it has to
read the memo to everybody in detail.
But the plan that was put forward by our operations team at my request was to come up with a timeline about how to approach public engagement outreach once we come up with a number. So
The next big thing.
August 4th is a regular select board meeting. Don't go too far. Yeah. Go back up a little bit, Jackie. So then there's another discussion to have, is when to do the override, okay? And so what we're operating on, an assumption right now to create a timeline, is to do it at the November midterm ballot, so it's November 3rd. And part of the reason for that is that we don't have to put on an extra election. And if we put it on the same ballot, that also saves us money. If we put it on a separate ballot, the town clerk says it basically is another election.
Right, because it's mailing extra ballots, and we're looking also at a multiple page ballot anyway. If you're following, there's a lot of ballot questions that have gone out for the second round of signatures. So there could be 10 ballot questions as well. So there's a lot of stuff on this ballot anyway. This is what we're looking at right now for budgeting purpose, because if the town has an appetite to pass an override, then our budget cycle in FY 28 is different than if it doesn't, and then we're preparing multiple budgets and if there's an appetite to try again. So November, if we want to go for November, then we have to turn in our ballot question to the state by August 5th. So we have to have our numbers together and everybody has to know what our options are, I would say by mid-July, so that everybody has a chance to vote to put that forward, who's going, the select board does. We have time to make sure that the language is correct and legal, that kind of thing. So mid-July. So then this timeline talks about an override webinar. We would run, we'd start really
a bigger public engagement campaign. Once we have those numbers nailed down, they're into the state. And now, we're moving on. Obviously, this is a public meeting. We'll continue to have public meetings and talking about it during select board and so forth. But we'll do a more of a campaign. There'll be a website, a dedicated landing page on the website. There'll be a form for people to submit questions, to get answers. There'll be a calendar of meetings. There'll be an updated tax impact calendar that was a calculator rather, that was very helpful for the debt exclusions. We'll do an online webinar that can be recorded and shared by RCTV and links on our pages. And so then we go through, they're planning an in-person forum at the library in mid-August, a virtual forum in late August. Now, a lot of folks don't really start paying attention to stuff until fall, summer's over and school's back on. So September has 2 regular select board meetings, which would have override opportunity in them at the appetite of the chair and the rest of the board. There would be an in-person forum. All in-person forums have virtual options. There'll be one at the library. There'll be a virtual forum. October, same kind of thing. The final information session would be October 28th. And then you would have a state election on the 3rd. Some of the communication assets that we have, some of our channels include the town website. We have email communication, so that includes things like the town manager minute, the Reading Public Library newsletter, the public schools newsletter, recreation has a newsletter. Our Elder and Human Services Department has one called Pleasantries. Obviously, we have social media. We can do press releases and one-on-ones with local media. And we, practice at media outreach. For public engagement, we'll do in-person and hybrid options. We've already covered that. We can also, attend community events, go, to all the different things. I already do office hours. I started a podcast. We'll talk about it then. You should tune in. It's fabulous. I've only done one, so, and then, we'll have information, printed materials that we can put out in different places. We can put out QR codes people can scan. So we have a lot of options that we can go forward. We are practiced at what is acceptable with the Office of Campaign and Public Finance. So there's things we can say, there's things we can't say. Obviously, we can't say, go vote for an override. That's not acceptable. But we put out factual information for people to be able to answer questions about what is being brought forward. Yeah.
Well, just to follow up on that, so I know that's, those restrictions exist on the town side. How does that extend to boards and committees? Just to clarify, I know there's some, do we as a finance committee, is it different than the select board and the school committee? Just curious as far as what that's
Yeah,
like.
there are some fine differences and we have information that we will give to all the boards, committees, and commissions. If you're an elected official, you can say whatever you want. You're elected. If you're appointed, it's a little bit finer. And like town staff can't advocate one way. We can't fundraise. We cannot go to a pro committee or an against committee and advocate to raise money for them, but we can go answer questions and provide factual information. And there's also limitations on what's done during working hours and non-working hours. So that's a factor too, but we have all of that already, and so we'll disseminate that.
Marianne.
So I think everything you proposed is great. I'm concerned you're just gonna spring a number on the public and everything else is, here's why, you have 2 months to accept this number. I look at what we did with the past override, with the failed override, with selling the Recal Killen project. And I know it's very difficult to engage the public in the summer. Is there any way there can be some kind of an informational meeting, like before the end of June with the public? Because this is gonna come out of nowhere to the public. I don't know if anyone else shares my concerns about trying to sell this whole thing after the board, after the
after it's gone to the state. And, you know,
Yeah.
you've got a very short time frame if you really want this to pass.
You're not wrong. I can definitely do a public forum before the end of June. I want to. Yeah, we can do one.
I mean,
But I want to just temper sort of what the expectation is. So like, we haven't decided yet on this number, the boards are talking about it, but you know, how we got here, the structural deficit. We can simplify it a little bit. We put that budget video out. We're gonna do another video, that will speak to the override as well, but it makes it a little
I mean,
easier.
the headline out of here, I see two people sitting in the audience who represent two local news sources. And they're both gonna show the image with like the override numbers per home. I mean, and everyone's gonna see that, and there's gonna be questions.
Yep.
So that's just,
No, I think that's great. Yeah, we can add into June. I don't have a problem with that. I'll go to anything.
I would love if people actually paid attention to our meetings, came to the
Yeah.
one, because
Yeah.
we haven't gotten the future agendas yet, but
this was even short notice, I mean, we know it was coming,
yeah,
but
no, I would
town
love to make sure
meetings.
more people know about the June meeting where, so there was saying something here, James saying the meeting, like talking about the level 1 and level 2 budget preparation, and then sharing that with us as soon as it's available, and sharing with the select board as soon as it's available in June. That would be 1 or 2 public meetings. I would certainly love to see more people at those, because we really want to minimize the surprise.
yeah, they're gonna have questions.
We're gonna have questions, because they are too.
It's true, and I know that we love a financial forum. We're riveted. I mean,
Yeah, no, you're right, there's probably a difference, what's needed is probably not the meeting that I'm talking about. What's needed is probably something a little more public facing, which is to say.
Yeah.
Shorter.
shorter, simpler, with the ability to dig into the details, but yeah, we'll work on that. So we'll come up with a date. I don't have a problem with that at all. That's a great request. Karen?
Thank you. One of the ballot questions is a reduction in the state income tax from 5% to 4%. And
Yep.
if you think about voters, that some of them are maybe not that engaged or not really reading all that stuff that comes in the packet, and given the economy, I'm really not gonna be surprised if that passes. So what that says is that the state revenues then it would be phased in over 3 years, and the state revenue would see a cut in about 10%, which flows directly down to us.
Right.
So what I'm thinking, I would be mentioning that to people. I don't know if we wanted, just explain that to people in this communication. By the way, there's another ballot question that can also throw that budget into chaos if this passes. Like, them make their own decisions, but understand that the ballot question is very much linked to all the planning you're doing.
No, that's a great point. And there's other pieces that tell the story.
Yeah.
Sharon has explained to you what is driving our structural deficit. You all understand accommodated costs. People who don't go to town meeting, that's a harder concept to understand. There are other pieces that speak to why we're where we are, right? If you've read anything from the MMA this year, you understand that unrestricted general government aid hasn't appreciably increased since 2008, since 2009. Those cuts were made as part of those 9 C cuts I was talking about in the middle of the year, and it's never really recovered. So the state is not, Massachusetts is one of the worst states in supporting municipalities, which seems bonkers for how, you know, but for how we understand our government tends to be supportive of a number of things, right? We have excellent education, we have the best state for education, but our state aid is really lagging other states in this country by far. So we're on the, I don't remember, Karen, if you remember what that number is, but it's like in the 40s, I think, Massachusetts, how poorly Massachusetts funds municipalities out of 50 states. We're bad. So that's part of the story that talks about this, is as the state is not really caught up to where it used to be, the localities are filling that gap. And we have other issues that are causing problems, so, yeah.
Ed?
So, on the sideline, and I agree with Diane, more engagement early is a fantastic idea. And I love all the effort that went into the timeline.
Can you just remind me, is there, and I know you mentioned the town clerk about having the, override with the, midterm election.
Yeah, November, yeah.
And so that November is, can you just remind me, like, is there any other drivers, like, budgetary wise, that we need to do it in November versus another time? And just, you know, kind of a little bit of like pros and cons as far as why to thread the needle on November 3rd.
Pros and cons for November.
Yep.
So you mean like election costs, related election
So
costs?
what if two of it's, so that definitely, and then also, do we need to know that number and have that in? Or we're working our way back to
So-
what we need to
You mean
do
like
for,
November versus April?
or whenever, I mean, we can do a special election, I would assume, at any time, right?
I mean, we just funded 3 elections in your FY 27 budget, and we have 3 elections in the FY 27. So if we do a special election, this is why I was saying, we should always have 3 elections budget, because special elections often come up. You can do a special election, we have not budgeted for that, for FY 27. And if you think, you know, we're coming out of FY 26, where we used so much more free cash, we're using less free cash in FY 27. FY 27 is thin, do you know what I mean? So I would not want to spend extra money on an election that we have not budgeted. So there's that. There's
What's the,
mailing.
what, like, generally, is the cost, is it, am I remembering this right, it's about 50 grand? Or is it more than that?
I think it's closer to 40 grand. 36, yeah, it's something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still a lot of paperwork.
And then, and if we did something in, say, in January, or we did something in a different, like, is there an impact as far as the application of that override to a budget, like?
So think of your
Timing-wise.
normal budget timeline,
Yep.
right? Sharon and department heads start their capital planning in the summertime. Then there's a financial forum in September. And typically what's happened in the last few years is that we're gonna limit the growth to this much use of free cash. And so then department heads spend, you know, October, November preparing for an early December presentations to the select board on what their first budget is. Everybody, you know, kind of thinks about that for a while, and then we start coming through to finance committee hearings. And there's another round of capital planning that happens in January where everybody meets again. The numbers are put into our financial system, and that's done in December. And then the town manager takes a whack at it, then FinCom takes a whack at it, and then we have to put the budget book together for town meeting. We have to have that together in February, pretty much, right? Jackie puts that together, and with Sharon, 2 amazing miracle workers. So yeah, I mean, if we're waiting till January, that's impossible to bring that to town meeting in time.
That's exactly what I wanted to say.
Okay.
That's what I expected you to say, and that's what I think people need to hear.
Okay.
Is that it's impossible to do it later, that's why November makes sense.
I mean, November is kind of as late as I'd want to go.
Perfect.
And then if it fails, then we're building that lower budget and we have more conversations and see what the community wants to do.
Yeah, that was a devil's advocate question, I just.
No, it's a
wanted-
great question.
Yeah.
And I'll put that in the back of my mind to do that.
That is asking questions and making things too, but that's okay, I do that so much.
Public benefit.
Thanks, Joe. I just think it doesn't matter when we do this, how long we do, we could have 35 meetings, all webinars, whatever you wanna do. And people still have no idea that the crash thing was discussed for 2-3 years. And, the same thing with the override. You have 2-3 years, it doesn't. People need to know when they wanna know, and that's essentially it. The only advantage that we have is that it's going on, you know, federal election kind of thing that's taking place, so that's where we're gonna get the most voter input on which direction to go. That's how I think that we should gauge this, it's based off maximum participation. You can put out all, whatever you want, and it's 2021%. I don't care. That's it. 2020.
Your personal growth is fantastic. So.
Thank you. So next one.
You're not wrong. What we know for sure, so when we were doing all of the public engagement for Recal and Killam, we had very few people turn out to those meetings, right? And especially Killam, very few people came out, and we're killing ourselves. They're walking notices to all of the hand delivering to houses in the area, very low turnout. We also were doing at the same time, the MBTA communities public engagement. This was going on the same time, all my staff. And we had 100 people on the regular come to those public meetings. People come out to what they care about. And I think people will care a lot about this. And I will tell you, I worked on the last overrides for FY 18, when we did 2018 overrides. It was 4.15, which was less than the previous override in 2004.
2003.
I beg your pardon. 2003, which was 4.75.
Lasted for 15 years.
It was 15 years.
It was 4.5, and then we went with a lower price.
Because the previous one had failed in 2017, so they brought back.
7.5.
Yes.
Kind of strange.
Deep breaths.
It's funny that that's the baseline number here, because that's scary.
The select board conducted a survey over the summertime. And I think I did that survey, and we had about 2,000, almost 2,000 responses. We had a really good, healthy response from the community. And we asked a number of questions. So we have not done a survey here. I don't know if there's an appetite to do that, but we can do that. And that can be disseminated. We did have a really good response to that, but we were asking questions specifically about what had failed and where to come from. And I think some of the lessons learned from the previous override, at least for me, was the 2016 ask was kind of vague. And it was general government, but most of it was for just the school department. And it wasn't real specific. When we came back for 2018, it was very specific as to what we were going to do, what positions were going to be hired in the school department, finance department, police department, there was hiring in different places. So there was a sense of a shared appreciation. There was something for everybody on that override. So that was something that was talked about, and it was very clear. And we made a concerted effort that, there were promises made and promises kept. What we said we would cut would be cut if it failed. What we said we would do with that money, we did with that money. And we were transparent about that and talked a lot about that, because that was something that was identified before as like something that I had called the trust gap, if you went to that presentation 150 years ago. So I think that the town's done a really good job, and the select board, all of the different select board members over the years have done a really good job to protect that ethic. The finance committee has done a lot to protect that ethic of transparency. And, we're going to do what we said we were going to do, and we're going to show you how we did it. So, that's a conversation. Do you think that the public would benefit from a survey now? And then what do you want that to look like? Which is another way that we can do engagement and get some data before we finalize the numbers. So I'm interested in what you folks have to say. I don't have all the answers. Did that for you.
I can go.
Marianne.
So yeah,
That's okay.
you can go first, ladies.
No, I just saw her. That's all. I'm just
Yeah,
letting the
ladies
chair
first. You
know.
can go first, it's fine.
Don't you recall in one of the previous overrides, I was on town meeting, and there was a meeting where we even had a poll of town meeting members about amounts that we would approve. I kind of wish we had done that in the last town meeting, but we weren't getting this level of presentation. It just took a lot to get that last one passed.
Yeah.
And with the fact that there was just a debt exclusion, and there's going to be, we're going to have CPA on the same ballot here. And I don't know whether it's literally the same ballot or whether we need CPA on a separate ballot for the override.
It'll go on the same ballot. It'll go on the same ballot. It'll be multiple pages. If it's 10 ballot questions at the state level, it'll be multiple pages and they'll be in there together.
But just the only other thing I was gonna raise is to the point of the third election or a special election. If we look at our peer towns, Melrose took 2 tries to get their override passed, and the same with Stoneham. Linfield held a small one and got it passed. Winchester failed. So do we want to build in the possibility of having a special election to try, like, if our first try doesn't go, if we come back with a different story and different amounts? I mean, I don't know, that matches our history. We
It
just have a
does.
Bigger delta.
You're right. That is absolutely, that's very common. You know, there's a backlash against the first pass, so we come back for another one. And then how do you bring one number forward first and then you bring multiple options later or vice versa? So if there was going to be sort of a second bite at the apple, it could be in the April election, right? Because your 3 elections are your September primaries, your November state election, and then the April general election. Those are the 3 budgeted elections for next year. So there is no budget for an additional.
Oh, right. September primary.
The September primary, exactly.
April would be the second. So it's if that came.
That would be the best option is to do it then, because you'll also be heading into a town meeting. You could call an early town meeting for a particular, to have a conversation about, I don't know, you don't need to do that, but talking about the budget, you know, that would be the timeline.
Currently speaking, that would be an H town meeting, previous elections at town meeting members. Because town meeting falls fairly shortly after the.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway.
So I wanted to start by saying that I was part of that last override, and I'm glad that Jane was there too, but it's very vivid in my mind, and I spent a lot of time trying to compare what's happening now with what's happening back then, and I would say it's 95% exactly the same thing. And we're talking about stopping, safety, school, accommodating cost. It's exactly the same scenario, which is kind of in line because when we were talking about the override a few years ago, the former town manager back then said, this money, the 4.15, it's gonna last us 4 to 5 years.
Right.
And then we're gonna come back to the farmers. So we are in the same exact situation now. The amount that's being put forward, it's an open conversation, but there is logic behind it. There's a reason why that amount is there. It's a different conversation if it's gonna pass or not. The prior one, the first try was at 7.5,
Right.
was cut in half, 4.15. There were specific reasons what was gonna happen. It passed by 60 points.
Yeah.
So 60 points is a pretty good pass, okay? Which shows that if you show the taxpayers what you're actually doing and why you need it specifically, and follow through with that, there is people will understand. The timing of it, is it perfect? Definitely not. We have the with what Marian just talked about, there's a lot of things going on, but also it's a different time right now. So asking taxpayer for $800 more on top of what everything is going on, it's tough, but it's necessary. And then what I remember what received very well last time was specifically showing where the cuts would be.
Yeah.
There was an eye opening for a lot of people. I got a lot, my neighbors, when they saw what was going to be cut, they really saw the true need for it. So the conversation about how much it's gonna be, it's a different conversation, but the process that we went last time was fully transparent, and it worked out well for the town. It lasted us 5 years. Maybe we're gonna have a bigger conversation. How can we invest and try to figure out a way of not to have an override every 5 years, but that's way bigger.
No, it's 10 years.
10 years since.
Third.
2018 is
Two-
when they are like, and we're asking for 20.
Yeah, so it lasted way more. That's what I'm
It's longer
saying.
than.
So-
Well, this is why,
The
that's why
conversation-
you have so much more use of free cash, right?
And because we also had a global pandemic that turned everything on its head, and we had ARPA funds in there, this infusion allowed us to last longer. So it would have been 5 years, but you know, how do you do that in the middle of a pandemic?
It's also been the last, I think the select board had a plan that they presented to stretch that a little longer. Like that's what we got the downtown smart project that came out of that.
Yeah.
So we're going to increase new growth, bring in more than.
Right, new growth.
So with anything that
Well, and
could be done along those lines.
to
This
your
time,
point, Eastern Gateway is the same thing. Eastern Gateway is a zoning changes, right, to drive new growth. That is your engine for the next 10 years. That's the only thing that's gonna stretch out. Reading is built out. So, you know, it's rezoning that area and seeing what can happen. And just because we rezone it doesn't necessarily mean something, it's not gonna happen overnight. It's gonna be.
One of the questions that I have is, we probably need to know a little bit more how long, the public at this needs to know, how long you, if this override passes, how long will it will last? I think that's a very proposition there, like the last one lasted, what, 8 years, right? 2018 to 2020. So, so 10 years, so it's pretty good, I think it lasted pretty well, so the public needs to know that.
So feedback wise, I like the idea of having multiple options, on the, with, you know, with one of them being, you know, Sharon's bare bone number. I mean, in some ways, that's how you consolidate, if you're trying to figure out a way to consolidate and not have 2 bites at the apple, maybe having 2 options gives you, you know, the voters.
Like Stoneham had.
Yeah, so you have something at 7 and something at 11, you know, or at 14, I don't know, you know. I don't think any more than 3 options is wise, maybe
No.
it's just 2. But I think something along those lines and, you know, and I think to Andrew's point, like, you know, as you're presenting those, there's facts about, you know, this will, you know, carry us for 3 years, this one will carry us for longer, you know, you can equate more to each of those options, but I think having a couple would be a good idea.
I also real quick just say like connecting that with Marion's point about like public input on the amount. I think this is practically speaking, offering multiple options probably is the way that we get public input on the amount. Because they're not gonna come for our long or informed change, as much as we'd love them to.
Some will, but I mean, what do you,
Some, right,
but
yes.
I mean, to get an idea of the range, do we go, you know, 7, 10, do we end at 14 or do we end at 12? Like, we may not know what the appetite is, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying, Ed. I just really worry about 2 options, like to Chris's point. I think a lot of people like don't read the news, you know, so I worry about how many people are gonna go to the ballot unless it's worded very, very carefully. We gotta see the difference between
But you give
7
yourself
versus
2 more,
14.
you give yourself another chance to pass something. If you give them 3 choices, and then, you know, instead of 2,
Yeah.
it's either yes or no, and now there's yes A, yes B, or no.
But I think a lot of people just kind of pick the lower number, like I think in the current environment, you know.
Is it just the amount or the years?
So if
How are you
you,
gonna present?
if you do multiple options, you say 1 question, so it's multiple questions. So it's, I approve, or whatever the language is, you know, an override of 11.8 million. And then the next one is I approve an override of whatever it is, and whichever one gets the most amount, or it's no, no, no. So, you know,
Can you be specific, for example, I approve 7.5 that will last 5 years, or that's? you don't-
the
you don't know
state, the
this?
state dictates kind of how the language is, so we have to be careful. I don't think we can say this will last this much. That's voter
Just have to
education
just- right.
before they go into the ballot box. And a big part of voter education is going to be ballot question committees. So if there's a ballot question committee that supports an override, and if there's a ballot question committee that doesn't, they're going to put out
information. We will work with any committee to give accurate information, because misinformation is bad news. So, we will work with everybody to give out accurate information. But that low number is probably gonna be, it fills the structural deficit, but it doesn't build anything back. You guys have been lobbied by a number of members of committees to increase funding for conservation, to increase funding for programming in this building, and eventually a recount. That low number doesn't include budgets for that. So you're not changing anything, but it's keeping that structural
But
deficit.
the expansion of adaptive sports at recount, is that in that number or not? That's
The adaptive sports at recount,
Yes.
that would be funded through fees and the new stabilization fund. So new funding for that at recount is
doesn't
not
include
included.
anything in. Okay.
No,
I mean,
I'm asking department heads to put those numbers in, so we're looking at that higher level. We haven't brought that to you yet. Okay, these numbers that Sharon has don't have that.
I see Sean's hand on Zoom.
Yeah, just two things. Jane, I think I heard you say, and I may have misheard you, but I think I heard you say that you have 3 questions on there, and the one that gets the most votes passes. I think it's actually the highest number that gets a passing vote is the one that passes.
That's
So-
a fine point, yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
and then I hear all the concerns about sort of the marketing effort and everything. I would say the good news, if there's any good news here, the good news is that there are a few towns that are going through this now. I would recommend folks take a look at formarblehead.org, which is Marblehead has an override vote coming up in 3 weeks, and they're doing a multiple choice option. They've done a phenomenal job of sort of detailing how you think about the 3 options. What happens if this one passes, this one passes, this one passes? There's a template out there for how to do this at this point. So again, you still need a override committee and all that sort of stuff, or a ballot question committee and all that sort of stuff to make it happen. But there's a template for how to do this and how to communicate it well at this point.
Thanks for that, Sean. Melrose did 3 options. And they had a ballot committee that did a good job of communicating. What does that mean in a way that is not, info dumping on people, but is relatable and understandable? So yeah, you're right. Jack, if you could put up on the board, page 38 of your packets, and this is available online for anybody watching in home. Page 38 tells you what recent elections have gone on, and if they passed or failed. And then there's a chart on the next page. There's one number that's wrong, but the rest of it is about right. And it tells you, like, going back to 2010 overrides that have passed and failed in the communities. So you can see Reading is in red here in the middle, and we failed in 2017, we passed in FY 29. Previous one, it's just a chart. What I thought was really great about this one is if you look at Reading, which is about 2/3 of the way down the slide, the 2017, or the 2016 effort, October 2016, was for general operation. For the April 2018 one, it's a teachers, athletics, police, fire, public works, everything. That's what's on the state website, how it was described. We didn't, this is not us, this is how it's put in. So that's very, yeah, it's just, it's interesting to see, but, yeah. So. It's an information error that stuff as well. And then if you go further in your packet, Joe, there's more free cash for kids. So yeah, so I think that's helpful, multiple options, we can present what we might recommend. You guys can pick them apart, talk about that.
But these 2 slides, 38 and 39, don't agree with respect to the fate of overrides in Winchester. That's the first one I noticed.
Yeah, the Winchester one is wrong.
Okay.
On the second one. The second one is wrong. Yeah, it passed in 2020. It was the largest override to date. It was $10 million, and they asked us how we passed ours in 2018. So.
5 years later, right? Take care of the index of one.
I have no comment.
Yeah. I just want to make sure I.
First statement of fact, didn't pass.
Yes.
This is outside the agenda of this meeting, so let's not have that conversation.
Josh, perplexed.
Didn't Brookline just have one too? They're on here for 2024.
Yeah. and
You
it's
have them
there.
up there, but they put it down as 2027 for some reason.
Fiscal year,
Fiscal year? Yeah.
these are fiscal years.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the.
We can ask Josh, you need the, what'd you do,
It's
Josh?
fiscal.
Oh, I was.
It's fiscal year.
And the previous slide doesn't, I think,
It has dates.
yes,
Yeah.
right, like,
After
the
initial packet was shared.
There's both fiscal year and date.
Yeah.
Both date and fiscal year.
Yeah.
But it doesn't show is the options, like, so Melrose had 3 options you could vote on. The second Stoneham one had 2 options.
You know, the. Library, not even on something. There were multiple rights that passed. Yes.
It's right there, it's just off the screen.
Yes.
Me,
Well, Jackie will move it.
Kind of hard to see.
Yes, I think it was all the way.
oh,
Okay, so
jeez, that's,
who had 11 million? Did that pass?
Winchester failed 11.5 million.
You know, we have halfway down.
I think it's
Brookline.
Brookline.
okay, their budget baseline is a much
That
larger
passed.
denominator.
It
It's a much
passed.
larger denominator.
It did pass.
It passed, yeah.
And
In
they passed
May,
another one.
looks like May 2nd,
23.5
For
million.
23.
23.
Alright. No, Brookline is not, so this is, yeah, I'm actually, this is a bit of a, this is a nit I wasn't gonna pick, but if we're gonna spend time on the slide, I'll go ahead and pick it.
Okay.
This is not specifically limited to, nor is it covering all of our peer communities. I think,
Not all of our peer communities have had overrides.
yeah, but.
I also recently introduced our peer community concept to Mr. DeLon sitting over there. So I was like, I asked the same, I'm like, where'd you get these towns? Like, how'd you pick up? So
Yes,
it's
that's
like-
you printed out the policy there.
I have the list now.
Yeah, so we'll refresh that for you. Our friend.
So, I mean, I think these numbers are interesting, but you almost have to know the relative budget of the community, the relative home value. Like that Brookline override of 23.5 million. When I looked at it, it said, you know, the average assessed home value in Brookline is double that of Reading.
Yeah, right.
And so when they talk about the increase in taxes, it was like almost a 25% increase in taxes, but if you look at some of our override amounts and add them into what we have for recal, we're looking at almost a 25%. You know, depending on the amount on us. My one thing I did want to point out with the 2018 override versus this is I looked back and the structural deficit we were trying to close back then was like under $2 million. Our override of 4.15 million was giving us new stuff. This override, we're getting nothing new. We're just trying to keep our head above the water.
Yeah, you do have.
And that, I guess that's something to convey, but it's
That
hard.
depends on the option, I think.
Are any of our options giving us anything new? They're just lasting longer.
Well, I think that's to be determined.
All the options.
I think that's to be
Okay.
determined.
So what we went through tonight is sort of, here's your structural deficit, here's what it looks like projected out.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I mean, I look at that and I don't see how anything less than 10 or 12 would even work for us. It wouldn't get us more than a couple of years, but that's, again, giving us nothing new. Right, so I guess it's just hard.
so I think it would be great for us to know, and you can email me what you want to see or go through your chair. To, you know, what you want to see at our next meeting, and then we could set a meeting date. Be great.
Brookline's budget, their annual budget is.
$450 million.
So, yes, it's, That would be a 7.0 million, that would be a $7.0 million override proportionally. Anyway, all right, sorry, enough indulging my arithmetic curiosity. All right, so okay, you've asked us sort of scattering of questions, and I want to make sure that we are actually doing our job and, giving our answers to them. For the question about schedule, I mean, given that community outreach timeline, it doesn't seem like we could possibly do anything earlier than November. And given your answer to Ed's question, it doesn't seem like we could possibly do anything later than November.
Wouldn't want to.
And so that's, okay. There's your answer.
We feel it's a sweet spot.
I mean,
but-
it's, yeah, I don't see a heck of a lot of other good choices, so. Like, you asked about multiple choice, I think everybody likes the idea of multiple choice, both because it gives the voters a say, because it allows us to give the voters a choice between, do you want us to come back in 3 years or 6? You might potentially give us the option to say, like, you would actually get something new with this. I mean, strictly speaking, by the way, this does like recap is new, so like,
Yeah,
even the baseline one does give us something new, and we should definitely.
and kill them,
Right,
yeah,
right,
I mean,
right,
the community is invested, so those will be cared.
Anything we said that I didn't just summarize there? See, and too, Sean.
Just one non-FinCom member opinion. I don't think there's going to be an appetite for an ask that includes anything new beyond, Killam and Recal. To me, the only reason to do that would be if you're thinking there's like a Goldilocks strategy where, you have an option that gives something new and expect that it's going to fail, and maybe your second best option passes or your second highest option passes. So, I think that becomes a tough sell when we're talking 8-digit numbers.
Just one other smaller thing, because even the traffic in the south. So, 5 weeks versus 3.
So, that's an option, is, the select board, when you voted in October, you voted to keep weekly recycling in. You would need to vote again to move to bi-weekly recycling if that's an easy way to get a $400,000 savings. That's roughly what it would be.
But that's how we could do like the options thing, like,
That's
a
one
lot of
thing.
people might care about this.
No, it'd be like, if we don't get this amount, well, and the thing is, when we talk about it, when we structure this. If we're going for that lower amount, that might not include weekly recycling. It might be a middle amount where you get the weekly recycling. Because public safety and teachers are a bigger priority. Than weekly recycling. For some people, maybe.
I think bullets around all of that, like, that spell out, what's in, what's out. I think having some tangibles, I think it's back to like what a lot of the committee has said is and again, I think it runs with our history. The more transparent we can be, the more details that we can provide, succinct ones, and that's not exhaustive, I think it's gonna help. But I think having all of those options out there, pros and cons of that, weekly versus bi-weekly, I think there's enough also, even though there's probably not many people that are, obviously in the room, or maybe there's more just watching on YouTube, but I think collectively for a lot of the elected boards and folks in town meeting and otherwise, we know what the hot buttons are. What people scream about. You know what I mean? So I think if we kind of mine that, kind of territory and present these options along those lines, I think you'll have more eyeballs and more attention. But it's like you said, it's trash and recycling. It's it's the schools, it's public safety, things of that nature. But I think those are the things that we need to talk to.
One thing I want to mention to the finance committee while we're here and we're early on in these conversations, you're asking like, what's in, what's out. Last time we included 2 new police officers. But fun fact I found out recently is that there has not been a staffing study for the police department since before Jordan's Furniture was built.
Yes.
There has not been a staffing study. So I said, how fast can you do a staffing study?
Yep.
For FY '28, what does that look like? By the way, I wouldn't let them outsource that, so they have to do it on their own. But seriously, like,
Yep.
you're not hiring a consultant. It's not easy to do, but we're gonna give it a shot. But with, smart growth and more density, there was a time when there were more police officers around and available. Now it's sort of like there's an accident here, there's an accident there, that, there's a domestic call, that they're not sitting around. Not that they were sitting around before, but there's just not a lot of elasticity in the system. If you understand what I mean by that. So a factor for people to be aware of. I think we're well-staffed in our police department. I think we're, well-staffed in our fire department, but people want a second ambulance. That's a conversation we have a lot, for like the west side. I want to thank the board. I'm sorry.
Well, just really quick, timing question, except that we won't have enough people for a while.
I can potentially have an estimate.
But that won't be how much of June. Yeah.
I mean, the issue is that.
Yeah, no, I'm just want to make sure there isn't any surprise.
There's a deficit of
about these
grants.
numbers and-
If you're deducting it from your free cash, and if that money comes in by September 30th, you don't have to deduct it, so it's a moving target until September 30th, I could give you an idea.
I'd just like to thank the boards who made time tonight to come out. We're all gonna be real close. We're gonna be spending a lot of time together, just saying. So, but I just wanna thank you for this. It's gonna be a list. We're all gonna work together. I'm gonna try and give you everything you're looking for to help everybody make these decisions and feel real confident in what we're bringing forward to the community, and then the community will decide.
That's a great to talk about future agendas in terms of when we should be meeting again.
I feel that's a great time for you.
Alright, so strictly speaking, out of order from the agenda, but this is absolutely when we start. So, you talked about getting level 1 budgets, getting a level 2 budget, coming back to the select board, coming back to FinCom. I don't know if that's 1 meeting or 2 meetings. We should probably have to sit in the audience while they sit up front sometime. There's requirements. We do outnumber them, but I don't think that's how this works. That's not how this works.
The select board would be here, FinCom would be here, and school committee would be in here.
Quality.
Wow.
I laughed. It's cool.
The select board has a meeting on June 23rd, which could be a good joint forum. You could start it a little earlier. We could, I don't know what the chair's appetite is for something like that. To have a conversation at the 23rd, or that week would be helpful, because that means I have to have everything to you by the 18th in your packet. So it gives me 2 weeks to do the work, basically. It's not a lot.
I think my only question would be, does it make sense to do it at a regular select board meeting or to do a separate meeting?
I love a separate meeting.
I
It gives me
hate
2
to
more
ask
days.
people to do a separate meeting, but I'm just wondering if we can get more people there, kind of, communicated as like a financial. Another.
Only come for this.
Only
Right.
topic is.
You're not gonna put it through a restaurant liquor relicensing or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly, that's my thought is.
But those are so.
People there for that.
Yep. And Josh just reminds me that, if we do a June meeting, we can invite all the town meeting members to join. It's not having a town meeting. And then pay attention to the budget.
You could, you have to, but.
We could have it in the pack. School will be out by the week of the 23rd, I think.
22nd is the last day.
It's all
Oh.
that frickin' snow, which we also had to pay to remove.
And then it melts anyway.
Not fast enough.
Never.
Yeah, okay, so, may or may not be able to get the packet, but that's, but yeah, okay, I think I'm hearing the.
Like the 24th or the 25th.
What day of the
Just
week
being the
is
first week of
22nd?
summer, reduce the public.
It means you can stay open longer because the sun will be, oh, I don't know. It means
Yeah,
I mean, it's like 23rd select board meeting, so we're talking about the 24th or 25th of June. I mean, there's gonna be people like, starting that week, a non-trivial fraction of Reading will be on vacation every single week until Labor Day. Nothing you can do about that.
We can do
We
a
can't do the
forum,
previous week.
we could do like a public engagement session earlier, but if, to get to the numbers that you're looking for, yeah. And I am taking vacation the first week in June. Don't hate me.
Yeah.
But I am taking vacation out. I'm gonna go see my dad. I haven't seen him in 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a place on 7. Do we probably have a placeholder? Is that,
That one's for last minute bills.
yeah, I mean, every year I've been on FinCom, Sharon has needed us to allocate something to FinCom reserves on Wednesday in June, so that's probably what that one is looking for. Assuming this year is not gonna be an exception. But there's no practice. You didn't have any knowledge of it mid-May last year either, so. So we might, although again, maybe we could potentially, yeah, do that at the end of this. 24th or 25th, because anything earlier, we're not gonna actually have the information we want. Yep. Not the 24th. Not the 24th, I just heard. They're birthdays are often school committee things. That can be a school committee meeting.
Yeah, Joe, we have I don't anticipate needing it, but we do have a placeholder for a meeting on the 25th. So
Hang out with us. I mean, I'm not, there's no law to defend on that on Wednesdays, and that's usually what we do. It's usually we do, because we're trying not to conflict with select board and school committee.
I think you can meet any day.
Right. So, are there any concerns about, I've heard concern with the 24th, are there concerns about the 25th?
Day of the week is this right?
Thursday.
Yeah.
if we do need a meeting, Joe, we could potentially get creative and, maybe have a 6:30 start, keep it short, and have this meeting start at 7:30 or something. We can get creative if we have to.
Appreciate that. All right. Is there anything else we should outside?
I think you.
Birthday the 25th,
We'll work on, getting us some public engagement for the sections.
Right.
Start.
Yeah. Your point well taken is public engagement. Just talking to us is not public engagement, even if they're, good public engagement would be targeted at public. The message for that audience. Not us that's up here.
That'll be helpful.
All right. Okay. Let's see, I'm looking at our agenda, we've talked about free cash, we didn't really talk about free cash projections, but there's some of that in the slides here, or in the part of the packet. We certainly talked about impact of field override, talk about future agendas. Is this the part where where the select board wants to adjourn? Please.
You're gonna be meeting, Wednesday morning, in the sheet.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all. Excellent. All right. All right. Careful, it's on the page. Yes. That all from that, and then we'll Very little bit of agenda. All right, we resume here. So we do have a spot for liaison reports. We put at the end so other people wouldn't have to sit through it. But I don't know if there are any that people want to share. I suppose I can get my final CPA study committee liaison report. As you all were there, you were at that meeting, you saw the CPA, it's on the ballot in November. That's it for that committee. Mark?
Well, me and Joe sat through the audit committee for
Yes.
the RMLD Tuesday, well, Monday night, clean audit. Sharon listened in and didn't have to say anything, so it was good.
He's doing one soon, keep it time, we're just still waiting for them to give us a final audit report for 25. They didn't do one last year, so we'll not need it to provide.
Oh, boy, more long meetings. Okay, other liaison reports, if any.
Just on the Killam side, Jane, you can correct me on this too, we've extended bidding for Killam.
Yes.
Now the bids will go through the middle of June.
Yeah.
Instead of 3 weeks prior, so it's.
They were originally due last Monday. And there was a problem with proprietary language in the specs. We have a proprietary purchasing for a few things. The process was done correctly, but some of the language in the specs, the Attorney General's office said was unacceptable. So rather than go through the whole thing and then have a bid protest, which would slow us down, the decision was made to just rebid the package, and so that's what's been done. It doesn't really put us off all that much time. It's just a few weeks. So, but if we had a bid protest, which we had a good inkling would happen, if we went forward and we lost, then it would push us even further, way further into summer and throw everything off. So, out of an abundance of caution, it was language that the designers wrote, and it's, a 2,300 page spec, so I'm exaggerating, but it's not by a lot. So they're huge.
But yeah, that's.
I skipped the rec committee and COA joint meeting last night to coach softball, but they did demo the new programming software. So now that the ARPA funds have kind of dried up, they're re-engaging on collecting user fees for some of the programming in Pleasant Street Center, and rec has always done it. So they're moving toward a new model, which will really help with revenue generation. Yeah, I don't know how the reaction was because that's Sunday.
We have 409 users, individual users from Elder and Human Services that are signed up on the system.
Possibly.
We've already collected over $2,000 in program fees initially. These are $5 classes, so.
That's a lot of paper.
I happened to listen to that meeting too, and what I was pleasantly surprised to hear is that the net cost of the new software is essentially the same as the combination of things of what we're using now. It's like $15,000 a year, so it's not gonna be a big increase, but it'll have more features.
Yeah, and it seemed, we've been looking at it at the, what are we called, some working group that I'm part of. Operations, thank you. I just go to stuff when they tell me to go. And it's definitely much more user friendly than the MyRec thing that Rec was using. And I think just having it consolidated, like I said, will kind of consolidate costs, and it's a good thing going forward.
But, and you couldn't do any payments on MyRec. I'm sorry, you couldn't do any payments on the senior center system either.
Right. Only on the MyRec ones.
John. Eastern Gateway Exploratory Committee is one of the recommendations that town staff is now working with CPDC to turn into zoning bylaw language changes to present to the meeting.
Anything else? All right, let's, we have, 1 set of minutes of each.
Motion to approve the minutes from the April 15th meeting as presented.
Okay. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Ed. And any comments, questions, revisions, concerns, or anything else?
Just really quickly,
Joe, sure.
the fight, for the 17th, should we still hold that date, or would we, if we did have to vote on something for this year, just combine that with the 25th?
Let's get back to that after we vote on this. That is a good question. And so, please, you're doing the rest to get out of here, we need help answering the question. So let's vote quickly on the minutes. Anything else on the minutes? All right, all in favor?
Yeah.
That was 5, maybe 6.
I
Was
thought
that-
we already were like.
Sorry. Okay, all right. There was a question about future agendas. Do we still need the placeholder for a meeting on June 17th, given the plan we just made?
Is that the one that we would have had?
On the 25th. Yes, that is the one we would have had. That would have been our,
I don't know of a reason we have, we usually leave it there in case something.
Right.
any more
I guess the question is, if something comes up, would
We
the
could do it on
25th
the
meeting
25th.
be?
We could do.
Okay, all
yeah.
right, sounds good. So
That would
that
be
sounds like,
Perfectly fine with me.
that sounds like we can remove our hold for the 17th,
Yep.
and because we're gonna meet on the 25th. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Ed, thank you, Mark, all in favor?
Yay.
Cool.